They stole everything that carried my name, my father's estate, my mother's love, even my future. But they forgot one thing. I was still breathing. When Sienna Graves receives a late-night message exposing her family's betrayal, her world unravels in seconds. What begins as heartbreak soon spirals into a labyrinth of lies, forged wills, and dangerous secrets buried beneath her parents' mansion walls. As she races to uncover the truth, one man, Ethan Hale, becomes her unlikely ally in a game where love and deception are indistinguishable. Every confession drags her deeper into a past designed to destroy her. But Sienna has one advantage her enemies never expected. She's learned how to play their game better than they ever did. The sound of my phone vibrating on the marble counter was sharp enough to cut through the silence of my apartment. I didn't rush to check it. Truthfully, I'd been avoiding messages all morning. My family's group chat had been a battlefield lately, filled with a kind of polite venom that only blood relatives could exchange without drawing visible blood. But something in the way it buzzed, 3 short bursts, pause, 2 more, made me reach for it. It wasn't a group chat. It was from Marina, my sister. The message was short, cruel, even in its simplicity. It's over, Sienna. Stop asking questions. The house was never yours to begin with. I blinked at the screen, reread it, and felt a hollow space open behind my ribs. The house. My grandmother's lake house. The one she'd promised me before she died. The one where she taught me to paint sunsets and laugh through heartbreak, where she whispered that some promises are made to protect love, not property. For a moment, the world tilted sideways. And then, the sound of laughter, my neighbors upstairs, snapped everything back into focus. I stared at Marina's message until my vision blurred, then typed and deleted at least 5 different replies. None of them could compress the years of manipulation, competition, and unspoken betrayal that had turned our family into strangers. Finally, I typed just one word, why, and pressed send. The city outside my window was alive in that disinterested, November way. People moving fast, pretending they weren't cold, the smell of roasted chestnuts mixing with exhaust fumes. My reflection in the glass looked foreign to me, hair unbrushed, eyes rimmed red, a mug of untouched coffee cooling beside the sink. I reached for the photo on the counter, Grandma Rose and me, taken at the lake house porch 2 summers before she passed. Her smile was faint but certain, the way people look when they know they're leaving something unfinished. The knock at the door startled me. I froze, halfway to the sink. Then a familiar voice said gently, "It's just me." Ethan Hale. Ethan had that kind of presence that made rooms feel smaller and safer at the same time. He'd been my neighbor for nearly a year, though lately we'd been something more. Not officially. Not labeled. But in every small way that mattered. He held up a bag of pastries from the cafe downstairs. "Peace offering," he said with that faint, crooked smile of his. "You missed breakfast yesterday and lunch the day before that." I tried to return the smile, but failed. "You shouldn't keep score like that." "I only keep score when I'm worried," he said quietly, stepping inside. His voice always carried warmth, even when his words didn't. He placed the bag on the counter, eyes catching the phone in my hand. "Bad news." "Worse," I said. "Family news." That was all I had to say. He knew my family's brand of affection, conditional, performative, transactional. He'd seen enough fragments of our chaos to understand that family news rarely meant celebration. He nodded slowly. "You want to talk about it, or should I distract you?" I looked at him for a moment. His soft gray sweater, the faint stubble on his jaw, the way his eyes, hazel with flecks of green, met mine without demanding an answer. "Distraction sounds good," I said. But even as he unpacked the pastries and handed me a croissant, my thoughts were spinning too fast to anchor. After breakfast, Ethan lingered near the window, watching the city the way people do when they're pretending not to watch you. I sat on the couch, scrolling through my phone, waiting for Marina's reply that never came. Instead, another message arrived, this time from Uncle Raymond. "Let it go, Sienna. The will has already been executed. It's for your own good." My pulse quickened. The will. I hadn't even mentioned it to him. I looked up at Ethan, words catching in my throat. He knows. Know what? That I asked about Grandma's will. That I was planning to go through her lawyer. Ethan frowned, stepping closer. Did you tell anyone? Only Marina. My voice cracked slightly. And now he's texting me to let it go. How would he even know unless? She told him. The simplicity of his statement sliced through me. Marina told him. Of course she did. It was always the two of them, Marina and Uncle Raymond, tight-lipped allies against whatever storm I represented. I'd spent most of my life pretending not to see it, but now the truth glared back at me from the screen. Ethan sat beside me, his hand brushing mine, grounding me. You think they forged something? He asked carefully. I shook my head. I don't know. I just know Grandma promised the house to me. She said it was where I belonged. And now suddenly, the will says otherwise, and everyone's treating me like I imagined it. His jaw tightened. Then we find out. There was something in his tone, a quiet certainty, that steadied me. But also something dangerous. Determined. I can't drag you into this, I said softly. He smiled faintly. You're not dragging me anywhere. I'm walking in willingly. That afternoon I drove to Rosewood Lake, the place that used to feel like home. The long road cutting through amber fields, the faint shimmer of water in the distance, it was all the same. But when I reached the gate, a shiny black SUV was parked in the driveway. And on the porch, laughing with a glass of wine in her hand, was Marina. I stopped the car, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles whitened. She looked radiant, too radiant for someone who'd just told me to stop asking questions. Her laughter floated across the yard, the sound sharp as glass. There was a man beside her. I didn't recognize him at first, but as he turned, my breath caught. Trent Maddox, Grandma's former lawyer. He was younger than most lawyers I'd met, polished, confident, with a reputation for keeping family secrets discreetly buried. And now he was sitting on my grandmother's porch, sipping wine with my sister. I stayed hidden behind the tree line for nearly 15 minutes, watching them. Every laugh, every touch of her hand on his arm, every gesture screamed conspiracy. When Trent finally left, Marina's face softened for a moment. She turned toward the lake, eyes distant, almost sad. For a second, I wanted to believe she regretted it all. That there was still a piece of the sister I grew up with. The one who shared secrets under the blanket fort, who promised we'd always protect each other. But then she took out her phone, typed something, and smiled. My phone buzzed. Stop stalking me, Sienna. This isn't healthy. My heart sank. She'd seen me. Or expected me. The message that followed was worse. If you show up here again, I'll have you removed. Legally. I sat frozen in the car, tears burning my eyes. Not the kind you cry from heartbreak, but the kind born of humiliation and disbelief. The lake shimmered under the afternoon sun, beautiful and cruelly indifferent. How many times had Grandma sat here, believing love could fix everything? How many times have I? My phone buzzed again, this time Ethan calling. I answered on the second ring. Hey. His voice was calm, grounding. You okay? No, I whispered. She's there. At the lake house. With the lawyer. Silence. Then, stay where you are. I'm coming. By the time Ethan arrived, twilight had settled over Rosewood Lake like a veil. He parked beside me, stepping out into the cool air. The reflection of the house glowed on the water's surface, distorted and distant. She's inside, I murmured. He followed my gaze, his eyes narrowing. We'll figure this out. But not tonight. You need to rest. I can't, I said. If I leave now, they'll get rid of everything. The paintings, the letters, maybe even Grandma's journal. Then we get proof first, he said, opening his car trunk. Inside was a small camera bag. I stared at him. You were planning for this? I was hoping you'd say yes to coffee, not stakeouts, he said with a half smile. But I like to be prepared. His humor, quiet and subtle, cracked through my panic. For the first time that day, I laughed, a short, trembling sound that felt foreign. Ethan stepped closer. That's better, he said softly. We waited until Marina's car disappeared down the road before approaching the porch. Every creak of the wooden steps felt amplified in the night air. The door was locked, of course, but the side window near the kitchen had always been stubborn about closing properly. I pushed it open carefully and climbed inside. The familiar scent of lavender and cedar wrapped around me, pulling me back years. Ethan followed, closing the window behind him. The house looked untouched, but colder somehow. The warmth that Grandma carried had been replaced by expensive furniture and sterile perfection. We searched quietly, drawers, cabinets, even the attic, but found nothing. No will, no letters, no proof. Until Ethan noticed something strange. A single painting hung crooked in the hallway, Grandma's favorite, the winter garden. But behind it, taped to the wall, was an envelope. My breath caught. He handed it to me, eyes steady. Go on. I tore it open carefully. Inside was a handwritten note in Grandma's looping script. For Sienna. If they tell you to let go, it's because they know what they've taken. My knees gave out. I pressed the note to my chest, the words blurring through tears. Ethan knelt beside me, his hand on my shoulder. Sienna, this changes everything. I nodded, trembling. She knew. She knew they'd betray me. He looked at me with quiet conviction. Then it's time we find out how deep it goes. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance low, echoing like a warning. And in that moment, I realized this wasn't just about a house. It was about truth. And the storm was only just beginning. The storm rolled in faster than either of us expected. Within minutes, the air outside thickened with the scent of wet pine and electricity. Lightning flared across the lake, and the house, the one that was supposed to be mine, shuddered as thunder cracked overhead. Ethan found candles in the kitchen drawer and lit them one by one. The glow painted his face in gold and shadow, the flickering light catching the worry etched across his expression. Who would hide something like this in a wall, he murmured, still studying the letter. Someone who knew the people around her couldn't be trusted, I said quietly, tracing my grandmother's handwriting again. My fingers shook, and the paper trembled with them. Ethan placed his hand over mine. Then she was right about you. You were the only one who kept believing her. I didn't answer. Because belief wasn't enough anymore, I needed proof. We moved through the house like ghosts, candlelight following us from room to room. Every corner carried a memory. The faint smell of her rose perfume in the hallway. The creak of the wooden floor where she used to hum old jazz songs. In her study, the books were rearranged, too neat, too intentional. The top shelf was lined with property documents and estate papers. I reached for one binder and froze. Raymond Graves and Marina Graves, property transfer authorization. My heart dropped. Ethan stepped closer. What is it? I turned the file toward him. They transferred the deed 2 weeks before Grandma died. 2 weeks. He frowned. That's impossible. She was in hospice care, barely conscious.
She was.
I was there. I flipped through the papers, hands trembling. Signatures, stamps, witnesses. Everything appeared official. But the signature wasn't hers. Not really. Grandma had a distinctive way of looping the R in her name, a flourish she'd used since I was a kid. This one was stiff, mechanical, like someone had tried to copy it from memory. I stared at the page, pulse pounding in my ears. It's forged. Ethan's jaw tightened. Then they forged the will too. The thunder outside deepened into a steady rumble. Rain battered against the windows, and the power flickered once, twice, before dying completely. Darkness swallowed the house except for the small halo of candlelight around us. I sank into Grandma's old chair, the leather worn smooth beneath my palms. I should have seen this coming. I just didn't want to believe Marina could. Don't finish that sentence, Ethan said gently. You're not the one who betrayed anyone here. But I couldn't stop the guilt that crawled up my spine. Maybe I had been naive. Maybe love really did blind you to what people were capable of. Ethan crouched beside me. Sienna, look at me. I met his gaze, and for the first time that night, the panic ebbed. His eyes held the kind of calm that made you want to believe the world could be fixed if you just stayed long enough to try. "I'm not letting them get away with this," I whispered. "Good," he said. "Because neither am I." We decided to take photos of every document in the study. Ethan used his phone's flashlight while I laid each page flat and steady. The rain outside turned relentless, hammering against the roof like an accusation. When we were done, he said, "You should get out of here. If they come back." "I'm not leaving yet," I interrupted. "There's something else." Ethan sighed but nodded. "Then we find it fast." I crossed the hallway to Grandma's bedroom. The room smelled of lavender and thyme. Her jewelry box sat open on the dresser, its velvet interior half empty. I lifted the mirror behind it and froze. Etched faintly on the wood beneath the glass were 3 words, carved in shaky script. "Ask Ethan Hale." For a second, I couldn't breathe. "Ethan," I whispered. He stepped in from the doorway. "What is it?" I pointed to the carving. He stared at it, then back at me, brow furrowed, confusion flickering across his face. "I swear I've never." "I believe you," I said quickly. But my heart was racing. Grandma had written his name, months before she died. How could she have known him? They'd never met, or at least, I thought they hadn't. Ethan looked pale. "Sienna, I think we need to talk." He sat on the edge of the bed, rainlight rippling across his face. "There's something I haven't told you," he began slowly. "About how I knew your grandmother." My pulse thudded. "You said you never met her." "I didn't. Not in person." He took a deep breath. "A year ago, before she passed, I got an anonymous request through my firm. Someone wanted a private investigator to look into irregularities in a will. The client used the name R.G. and paid in cash." I stared at him, speechless. "She was investigating her own family," he continued. "Your uncle, your sister, all of them. She suspected they were planning to rewrite her will. She told me to watch for anyone trying to move property titles before her death." "Why didn't you tell me this sooner?" "Because I didn't know you were her granddaughter until I met you here," he said quietly. "I thought it was a coincidence at first. I never connected you to Rose Graves." The room tilted slightly around me. "You mean all this time?" "Yes," he said. "And when you told me about your family, about the lake house, I realized who you were. But by then she was gone, and I didn't know how to tell you without sounding insane." I pressed a hand over my mouth. "She trusted you." He nodded once. "And now I think she left something behind for you. Something more than that note." We searched again, more methodically this time. Behind a false drawer in her desk, Ethan found a small metal box, its hinges rusted but intact. Inside lay a flash drive and a folded piece of paper sealed with wax. I broke the seal and read aloud. "If you are reading this, they've already done it. Don't confront them until you've seen the recording. Trust no one but the one whose name I carved." I looked up at Ethan. The candlelight trembled between us. "Recording?" he asked. I nodded. "The flash drive." We plugged it into Ethan's laptop. The screen flickered to life, showing grainy footage from a security camera, Grandma's study. The date stamp was 2 weeks before her death. Uncle Raymond sat at her desk, flipping through papers. Marina stood behind him, arms crossed. Trent Maddox, the lawyer, was there too. They were arguing. The audio was faint, but enough to catch fragments. Raymond, "She won't even remember signing it." Marina, "She's confused, not stupid. If Sienna finds out." Trent, "Then make sure she doesn't." The rest of the audio dissolved into static, but it didn't matter. I had all the proof I needed. Ethan leaned back, exhaling slowly. "They drugged her. Or worse." I nodded, tears burning behind my eyes. "They stole everything from her while she was dying." "And she knew," he said. "That's why she hired me." Lightning flared again, flooding the room in white light. For a heartbeat, I thought I saw a shadow move outside the window. Ethan noticed it too. He crossed the room, peering through the rain-streaked glass. Nothing but trees and darkness. Then, a flash of headlights down the road. "Someone's coming," he said sharply. "We need to go."
Now.
I grabbed the flash drive, the letter, and Grandma's note, shoving them into my bag. Ethan blew out the candles and guided me toward the back door. As we slipped out into the rain, my car alarm suddenly blared. We froze. The headlights drew closer, then stopped in front of the house. Through the sheets of rain, I saw her step out. Marina, umbrella in one hand, phone in the other.
Her silhouette was calm. Too calm.
Beside her, another door opened. Trent Maddox. My stomach twisted. They know, Ethan whispered. They must have seen our cars. I backed toward the trees, rain soaking through my coat. My sister's voice carried faintly over the storm. She was here. I told you she wouldn't let it go. Trent's reply was drowned out by thunder, but I saw the motion, his hand gripping her arm, the quick glance toward the lake. Ethan took my hand. Come on. We slipped deeper into the woods, hearts pounding. Every flash of lightning illuminated the path ahead. The dock, the boathouse, the lake shimmering like liquid glass. We didn't stop until the house disappeared behind the trees. By the time we reached Ethan's car, my clothes were plastered to my skin. He threw a blanket around me and turned on the heater. I stared out the window, the rain blurring everything into streaks of silver. They'll destroy what's left, I whispered. They'll burn the papers, wipe the footage. Not if we move first, he said. We have the copy, the signatures, the recording. That's enough to take to the police. I turned to him.
And what then?
They'll deny everything. Marina will say I broke in, that I'm unstable. She won't get the chance, Ethan said quietly. I'll make sure of it. Something in his tone sent a chill down my spine. Not fear, something deeper. Determination. I reached out, touching his hand. Ethan, don't do anything reckless. He met my gaze. Too late for that. We drove back toward the city in silence. The storm followed us halfway before fading into drizzle. My phone buzzed 3 times before I dared look at it. All from Marina. You shouldn't have come. You don't know what you've done. You'll regret this. I switched the phone off. Ethan glanced at me. She's bluffing. No, I said softly. She's warning me. When we reached my apartment, dawn was beginning to break, a thin gray light stretching across the skyline. Ethan carried the evidence to the kitchen table and began sorting everything: photos, documents, the drive. He worked methodically, almost too calmly. His shirt clung to his shoulders, soaked from rain. There was a quiet focus in him that both comforted and unsettled me. You should rest, he said without looking up. I'll go through these and make copies. You're not sleeping either, I pointed out. He smiled faintly. I'll rest when we're safe. I hesitated, then reached out, placing a hand on his arm. Thank you, Ethan, for believing in me. He turned to face me, eyes softening. I didn't believe you, Sienna. I knew. There's a difference. Before I could reply, the lights flickered once and went out again. We froze. This time, it wasn't a storm. This time, it was deliberate. The apartment fell into darkness, and from somewhere in the hallway came the faint, unmistakable sound of a door unlocking. Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. We're not alone. The sound of the door unlocking was soft, deliberate. Not a break-in.
A key.
Ethan's hand went instinctively to my wrist, pulling me back toward the shadow of the hallway. The air in the apartment had changed, heavy, alert. He motioned for silence. We both listened. Footsteps. Slow, measured, unhurried. Whoever it was knew exactly where to go. Then a voice, soft, familiar, and laced with ice. Sienna, I just want to talk. Marina. I felt my heartbeat in my throat. Ethan mouthed, stayed here, and stepped toward the living room, moving like someone trained to disappear into dark corners. I stood frozen in the hallway, pulse roaring in my ears. Marina's silhouette appeared first, a faint shape against the city's pale dawn filtering through the curtains. She looked composed, almost elegant, not like someone caught trespassing. When Ethan stepped forward, the flicker of surprise in her eyes lasted barely a second. Oh, she said lightly. So, this is where you've been hiding. Her gaze slid to me, cold and assessing. I was hoping you'd have the decency to call first. Instead, you break into the lake house like a thief. You forged Grandma's signature, I said, my voice trembling but steady enough to fill the room. You and Uncle Raymond. We have proof. For the first time, her composure cracked. Barely perceptible, but there. Proof, she repeated, her tone thin. What proof could you possibly have? The recording, Ethan said evenly. And the transfer papers. Her eyes flicked to him, recognition dawning. You, she breathed. You're the investigator. Ethan didn't flinch. I was. Marina laughed once, a hollow sound that didn't reach her eyes. Of course. Grandma's little spy. The silence that followed was suffocating. Lightning flashed again, far off in the distance, though the storm had long since passed. Marina's gaze softened, almost pitying. You don't understand, Sienna. She wasn't thinking clearly. Raymond and I. She was more lucid than you ever were. I cut in. And she trusted me. That's why you hated me for it. Her jaw tightened. You were always the favorite. The golden child. Do you know what it was like watching her give you everything while we? She gave us both love, I said, my voice rising. You turned it into currency. Marina's expression flickered with guilt. Then, as if she couldn't bear it, she straightened, mask snapping back into place. You can't prove anything in court. Trent's already sealed the revisions. Ethan stepped forward. We can prove everything. The recording, your messages, your late-night meeting with Maddox, it's all documented. Her lips parted slightly. The smallest tremor ran through her hand. You don't know what you're getting into. I already do, I said. For the first time in years, I didn't see her as my sister. I saw her as a stranger wearing my sister's face. She turned to leave, but Ethan blocked the doorway. Not so fast. For a moment, I thought she might try to push past him, but she stopped. The silence stretched, sharp and dangerous. Then, unexpectedly, she exhaled.
Fine, she said softly.
If you want the truth so badly, I'll give it to you. I exchanged a glance with Ethan, uncertain. Marina lowered her voice. Raymond planned everything. Trent only executed it. The money from the estate, half of it's already gone. Offshore. He said Grandma would have wanted it handled that way, but she shook her head. I didn't know he'd forged the will until after it was done. Why didn't you stop him? I demanded. Because by then it was too late, she whispered. And he said if I told anyone, he'd make it look like I masterminded it. I studied her face. The fear there wasn't fake. Where is he now? Ethan asked. She hesitated. At the lake house. There's more. He's moving everything out tonight. Records, cash, anything linking him to Maddox. Ethan's eyes darkened. Then we're going back. The drive to Rosewood Lake was a blur of headlights and adrenaline. The sun had barely risen. Fog hung low over the road, the kind that made distance seem like a mirage. Marina sat in the back seat, silent, hands clasped tight. Ethan's jaw was clenched as he drove. I could see his reflection in the windshield, all sharp focus and quiet fury. I wanted to ask if he trusted her, but I already knew the answer.
He didn't.
Neither did I. But sometimes, justice requires strange alliances. We reached the lake house just after 7. Raymond's SUV was parked crooked in the gravel drive. Stay here, Ethan said, already unbuckling his seatbelt. Not a chance, I said, opening my door. Marina followed hesitantly. The three of us approached the porch. The door was ajar, swinging faintly in the morning wind. Inside, the house was a mess, drawers open, papers scattered, boxes half-packed. And in the center of the chaos stood Raymond Graves. He looked older than I remembered. Eyes sunken, tie loose, a sheen of sweat on his forehead. But his voice, when he spoke, carried the same old authority. So it's true, he said. You couldn't leave well enough alone. Ethan stepped forward. You're finished, Raymond. The older man's gaze flicked to Marina. You brought them here? She looked away. I didn't have a choice. He laughed bitterly. Of course not. You never do. I moved closer. We have everything. The forged documents, the recording. It's over. Raymond's eyes met mine, cold, calculating. You think the police care about family squabbles? You'll ruin the Graves' name for nothing. It's not about the name, I said quietly. It's about Grandma.
He flinched at that.
Just barely, but it was enough. Ethan took out his phone, thumb hovering over the call button. One call, and this entire operation collapses. You've got 5 seconds to make this easy. Raymond's expression hardened. Then, almost imperceptibly, his hand drifted toward his pocket. Ethan, I whispered. Too late. He pulled out a pistol. For a split second, no one moved. The sound of the wind outside filled the room. Ethan shifted slightly, positioning himself in front of me. You don't want to do this. Raymond's voice was low, trembling with something between anger and despair. You have no idea what you're meddling with. This family built its fortune on secrets. I'm just protecting it. At what cost? I asked. Grandma's memory? Your conscience. He sneered. Conscience doesn't pay the bills. Then sirens. Faint at first, growing louder. Raymond's eyes widened. Ethan held up his phone. Already called. The older man's hand trembled, then dropped the weapon to the floor. The sound of it hitting the wood was louder than thunder. The next few minutes unfolded in a blur. Police cars, flashing lights, questions, statements. Marina sobbing quietly on the porch as officers led Raymond away in handcuffs. Trent Maddox was picked up an hour later, found trying to flee the county. By noon, the lake house was quiet again, except for the whisper of the wind across the water. I sat on the porch steps, the same spot where Grandma used to drink her tea at sunrise. The chaos had drained out of me, leaving only exhaustion. Ethan joined me, handing over a cup of coffee. They'll press charges for forgery, fraud, and coercion. You'll have the house back once the estate clears. I stared at the water. It doesn't feel like a victory. He nodded. Justice rarely does. It just feels quiet. We sat in silence for a long time. Later, after the police left, Marina approached me. She looked small, stripped of her usual confidence. Her eyes were swollen, but clear. I'm sorry, she said. I believed her. Maybe not enough to forget, but enough to let go. I know, I said softly. So was I. Once. She nodded, tears threatening again. I'll testify against Raymond. I owe Grandma that much. I managed a faint smile. You owe it to yourself, too. We hugged briefly. Awkward, fragile, but real. Then she left. Ethan watched from the porch. That was merciful. She's still my sister, I said. And she's already lost more than I could ever take from her. Weeks passed. The story hit the local papers under the headline, Family Fraud Uncovered, Graves' Estate Forgery Exposed. The town buzzed for a while, then moved on. People always do. The house at Rosewood Lake became mine officially 6 months later. But by then, it wasn't about ownership. It was about peace. About coming back to where things began and choosing to stay, not out of guilt, but out of love. I restored Grandma's study exactly as she'd left it. Her painting, The Winter Garden, hung straight again. Beneath it, her carved message, for Sienna, remained untouched. One evening, I stood on the porch, the lake shimmering under the golden light of dusk. Ethan stepped up beside me, his hand finding mine. You ever think about leaving this all behind? He asked. Sometimes, I said. But then I remember she wanted me here, to protect what mattered. He smiled faintly. And what's that? I turned to him. Truth. And the people who stay when everything else falls apart. He leaned in then, soft and certain, his lips brushing mine in a kiss that felt like a promise kept long overdue. When we finally pulled apart, the lake was still. The world, for once, is quiet. That night, as I sat alone by the fire, I opened Grandma's final note again. The ink had faded slightly, but the words remained strong. Forgiveness is not weakness, Sienna. It's how you end the story, without letting it end you. I smiled through tears. For the first time in years, I felt weightless. The past had taken enough. It didn't get to take the ending too. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying the scent of rain and memory. And as the firelight flickered across the room, I realized I wasn't haunted anymore. Just home. Sienna Graves exposes her family's fraud, reclaims her grandmother's legacy, and finds healing alongside Ethan Hale. Justice is served, relationships are redefined, and the story closes with emotional peace and romantic fulfillment.